foreign, predatory, parasitic corporations are replacing our natural environment with an industrial landscape of wind turbines. One Nation will stand against sending children down a path of drug dependency and body mutilation to appease the gender cult. Leave our kids alone. The Trusted Digital Identity Bill is a global surveillance and control mechanism that profit-hungry corporations and power-mad politicians drafted and crafted. One Nation opposes this inhuman, dystopian future that the United Nations promotes as the Great Reset, and we condemn this Parliament for signing on to it. I called for Australia to reject the World Economic Forum's Great Reset and instead mount a great resist. Just like the koalas being euthanised to make way for wind turbines, or damaged solar panels leaking toxic heavy metals into waterways, the United Nations net zero plan again involves killing the environment to save it. I've been speaking about the fear, the oppression and the inhuman cruelty of our COVID response since July 2020. I promised to hound down those responsible, and I will continue relentlessly to keep that promise. You're about to be live with me, Senator Malcolm Roberts. Hi, another Friday and another welcome to the only real opposition party in the country, the One Nation Party. This is my weekly wrap-up. I haven't been in Parliament this week, but been very, very busy. So this has been going to be short, very short. And I want to thank my staff because normally I put together a lot of notes and they add notes. What I'm doing this time is relying entirely upon my staff because I've just been stretched. I'm doing a submission. I've been working all week on a submission to an inquiry into the Senate into the misinformation and disinformation bill that's going to be coming back for sure. So we'll talk about that more later. The big item of news is a very sad item of news, and that's the death of Charlie Kirk, actually the murder of Charlie Kirk. So I'd like to take a moment to honour the memory of Charlie Kirk. Now, I've been in every American state. I've studied, worked, lived in 8 states in America. I love Americans. I'm married to an American wife, and both our kids are dual citizens. I admire the American dream. We took a lot from the country when our country started. The Constitution has its roots in Westminster in Britain and also in Washington, D.C. So I'm very, very pleased to see America. But having said that, I'm just too busy, so I don't know a lot about what's going on in America these days. And I know about Trump, of course, but I haven't been following American politicians or American activists very closely at all. So I don't know much about Charlie Kirk, but I've watched a few of his videos, and he is a stunning, outstanding human, very much a human. In his love of humans, his love of Christianity, his love of Christ. And I've seen some fantastic speeches. A marvellous young man, only 31 years of age, leaving a wife and 2 children, but most of you know these facts. He was a victim of political assassination in Utah. And though he is American, he inspired an untold number of young people right across Australia. I know some of them. He represented the purest forms and purest principles of democracy. Civil debate, free speech, and connecting with people on a human level, even when you disagree with them. He was shot because he was winning debates, not by being a bully, but by simply putting the facts out there and listening. A marvellous man. He invited students to a fair debate, which usually became a patient attempt to return each person back to first principles. Excuse me. It was here with the implementation of reason and knowledge. It's so important. Our world is lacking reason these days and knowledge, that so many young people found their way back to the truth. He actually started attracting a lot of young people just sitting up on campus and inviting people to challenge him and change his mind. So Charlie, rest in peace, and thank you, mate, for everything you've done for the whole Western world, the whole world, because bringing reason back into the world is vital. But I'm saddened by some of the disgraceful reactions in Australia that I must call out. First of all, Bob Carr, the so-called Labor legend. What a grubby response. He's been an unhinged rant in response to a human being dying, a human being being murdered. Look at that that you see up there. Political violence has become all too common, And this is not who we are, Speaker Johnson says. A statement of breathtaking historical ignorance. The USA was born in violence and amplitude sustained itself by violence against native peoples, its Mexican neighbour, and for white rule in the South. Every country has got blots on its image and its reputation, but the United States lifted the whole damn planet to another level and lifted humanity to another level. In recent decades, presidents have not been very good, with the exception of Trump. We understand why, because the globalists have taken over America. That's abundantly clear, but the original vision of America was absolutely astounding, and it lifted the whole of humanity. How dare Bob Carr talk about that when we're talking about a death of an American, a murder? He hasn't uttered a word, though, of criticism about the Chinese Communist Party. He was there just a few days ago, 9 days ago or so, and took part in a massive military parade that took place next door to Tiananmen Square just 9 days ago. Why is he bagging America and leaving China alone? Why is he bagging America at all? Is he going to have a rant about the Chinese Communist Party? I haven't heard it, haven't seen it, but that's pretty typical of a man who gives grubby responses. And what about Hannah Ferguson? Another dishonourable mention. She heads up Cheek Media and spoke at the National Press Club just 3 months ago. Is violence sometimes necessary? Yes, she says. Contemptible from Hannah Ferguson, who spoke at the Press Club, as I said, just 3 months ago, and is a regular guest on the ABC. Regular guest on the ABC. Why? Violent left-wing extremism is going mainstream in Australia. So you can be violent if you're from the left, the control side of politics, but you can't be violent if you're on the right side of politics. You can't be violent anywhere in our book. Nowhere. In response to the political assassination of a father with 2 girls, beautiful girls, whose only crime was speaking to people who disagreed with him. That's his only fault, speaking with people who disagreed with him. And worse, he listened to them, regardless of their views. So she said in response, is violence sometimes necessary? Yes. I won't waste any more time on that, other than to say anyone who delights in the death of another human being does not deserve a place in political discussions. Let's get on to a topic that I've led the way on in this country for the last 4 years, and the One Nation has led the way on for the last 28 years. In the spirit of debating issues and dealing with the facts, there have been some incredible figures on the immigration debate, and some of our staff have been digging these up. We've all heard, I'm sure you've all heard, we need migration for the skills shortage. Bring in skilled people. Well, have a listen to these figures from Macro Business. They're quoting from a report by Australian National University, ANU. The report shows just 12% of places in the nation's permanent migration program are going to skilled workers. 12%, less than 1/8. In 2023-2024, the permanent migration program of 185,000 people delivered just, wait for it, 166 tradespeople. 166. That's 0.09% of new permanent residents as tradies. 0.09 of new permanent residents as tradies. Instead of skilled workers, many of these places are being allocated to members of skilled workers' families, who all need beds and roofs. So is migration really about a skills shortage? No, it's not. That's just a lie to cover up something else, which we have discussed and which I'll discuss repeatedly, and it's starting to get traction in the community. Now, The Guardian is not exactly my favourite media outlet. They support mass migration. They accidentally published the truth about stopping migration. They found that wages for Australians would be 7.5% higher after 10 years if we stopped migration. So stopping migration, they did a study and the forecast that it would be that wages would increase 7.5%. Wonderful news. They also found that house prices would go up 2.3%. So if wages go up 7.5%, that's faster than house prices going up at 2.3%, which means houses are actually more affordable for Australians. That's what's great news. Slashing migration could actually lead to higher house prices in Australia, and I've just explained they wouldn't rise as much as wages. And they found that 67%, that's more than 2/3 of Australians agreed, Australia should reduce its migration intake to reduce pressure on the housing market. I'll say it again. More than 2/3 of Australians agree that Australia should reduce its migration intake to reduce pressure on the housing market. Who the hell should governments be looking after when it comes to any policy, migration, any policy? The people who are already here. So there are 3 takeaways from this economics report by The Guardian. Mass migration reduces wages for Australians. Fact. We've talked about that, we've said it. That's one of the objectives of the corporates. Secondly, mass migration makes housing more affordable for Australians because the impact on wages is greater than the impact on house prices. Thirdly, the overwhelming majority of Australians agree we should cut migration to fix the house prices. Why have I been leading the debate on housing and immigration for the last 4 years? Because I listen to people. I actually listen to people, and that's what the people have been telling me. So thank you to The Guardian for that great information. Uber Eats, Uber Eats is eating itself. And where's the Labor Party? Uber Eats in the United Kingdom, Britain, have complained that if the immigration invasion is slowed down, the price of delivered food will increase. By the way, I just watched, didn't watch it, I actually listened to it while I was driving. That's the only chance I can get to videos. Comparison between what's happening in Canada, Britain and Australia. Almost identical with regard to housing, immigration, the quality of immigrants coming in, the skills of immigrants coming in. This, as I've said before, I was on a podcast with a former British immigration minister, and what he was saying in answer to questions was almost identical to what I was saying happening in Australia. And it's definitely a global agenda to break down culture and break down national pride and unity. But anyway, getting back to Uber Eats in the United Kingdom. They've complained that if the immigration invasion is slowed down, the price of delivered food will increase. The ride-hailing giant, which operates the Uber Eats takeaway app, warned its delivery expenses could rise in response to new rules intended to clamp down on illegal working. So they want to clamp down on illegal working. But that's going to hurt Uber because it'll increase wages. This is self-owned by Uber. It's an own goal. Uber Drivers Forum on Reddit and Facebook showed drivers in quiet times earn as little as $5 an hour. 5. And in busy times, they can earn $30 an hour before the cost of insurance and running their vehicle is taken out. The minimum wage in Australia is $25 an hour. Most Uber drivers earn less than the minimum wage. In Canberra, when I occasionally get a taxi, I've met people who are taxi drivers who've gone away from taxi driving and become Uber drivers and come back because it's not paying as much. So new arrivals are needed to work in the gig economy, such as Uber, because they don't realise how much less they earn than someone in secure employment. And they're desperate to start working and to send money to their families and relatives overseas. The Labor Party is meant to be the party of the worker. Where the hell are they on this? Labor has abandoned Aussie workers. Labor is instead for illegal migrants and tax dodging corporations like Uber. Here's some more figures. I've been saying we need to deport 75,000 people. The latest figures are out, and I'll say that the latest figures show. We need to deport 100,000 illegals. 100,000 illegals here illegally. So as of July 31, there were, excuse me, I didn't turn my phone off. As of July 31, there were 98,979 people. 98,979 people. That's almost 100,000, whose protection visa application had just been denied, but were yet to be deported. 100,000 ready to be deported. And that's not counting the students who are in breach of their, foreign students who are in breach of their visas. So these 100,000 who are ready to go, ready to be deported, they've had all their visa applications rejected. They've had no legal way to remain in the country. Yet the government has not deported them. They've just let the numbers grow and grow and grow. Each one of them is taking up a bed. Each one of them needs a roof over their head. That's keeping many of the thousands of Australian homeless out of a house. So guess how many of the 100,000 were deported in July? Let's have a guess. You can count them on the fingers of one hand. 5. 5. One Nation says deport the whole lot immediately. 100,000 beds, homeless Australians could be instead of illegal migrants. And then we have David Crisafulli, the Premier of Queensland. Now, I've been complimentary towards David on a number of things, but this time he's wrong because he's defending mass migration. Now, remember, I'm a migrant. My father was Welsh. I was born in India. My mother was Australian, but I was a British citizen when I arrived. So I am a migrant. So what's the Queensland Premier David Crisafulli's response to the mass migration crisis? Remember, our problem is not migrants. Our problem is mass migration. So this is a quote, David Crisafulli defends migration's role in making Queensland great. Fresh from his trade mission visit to India and Japan, has launched an impassioned defence of the state's multicultural communities. Number one, David, we understand you might be sucking up to the Japanese and the Indians to get some trade, and that's reasonable to get trade, but you do not do it at the expense of Queenslanders. Your number one priority is Queenslanders, regardless of their skin colour, regardless of their background, their ethnicity, their religion, their previous nationality. Your number one responsibility is to Queenslanders. There are Queenslanders sleeping in beds in every major provincial town in this state, along from Cairns, Townsville, Mackay, Rockhampton, Gladstone, Maryborough, Bundaberg, Ipswich, Logan. Where else have I seen them? Ipswich, Logan, and I'm missing something. But basically Gympie, that's right, Gympie. There's a horrible story in Gympie. Every major town in Queensland is struggling with homelessness because mass migration is supercharging the housing crisis. I was in Gympie a few months ago and drove into the concrete multi-level car park, and there were a whole bunch of tents set up there because people are out of work. Why Gympie? Because Gympie's the end of the line when it comes to the 50-cent train fares from Brisbane. That's why. David, this is happening on your watch. You have to call out mass migration for the benefit of Queenslanders. And here is yet another example of Labor in particular, but Liberal Labor not listening. Labor is pressing ahead in Victoria with the treaty, the Aboriginal treaty, after the no vote. Almost 70%, I think well over 60% of Victorians voted no. I'm sure all of us can remember when the country voted no to the voice to Parliament. Well, the Victorian Premier, Jacinta Allen, is giving the middle finger to the 2.2 million Victorians who voted no. Allen has recently announced the Victorian Treaty. Victorian schools will roll out an Indigenous history curriculum. Oh, that'll be great. Geographical features across the state could be renamed, and the public sector will undergo retraining to become culturally capable under the Labor government's treaty deal. The curriculum changes are frightening. 4-year-old children in Victoria are going to be taught to hate themselves, to hate Australians, that they are somehow guilty for what happened hundreds of years ago, and that they have nothing in their Australian culture to be proud of, nothing to be proud of. This is what One Nation means by the left being divisive and racist. But look, this is nothing new really, because I've said that the left and right is a meaningless term. It should be control versus freedom, control versus freedom. And so this is the control side of politics, trying to do what it does best, control. Everyone should be treated equally regardless of skin colour, heritage or religion. Everyone. That's why we are called One Nation. One Nation, not a black nation, white nation, Catholic nation, Buddhist nation, Muslim nation, Australia, One Nation. And it's not happening just in Victoria, and it's not ending in Victoria. It's spreading to other states. Actually, Queensland's had it for a while. A native title claim was being heard in Brisbane court. The claim covers highly densely populated areas of Redland City, which for those not in Brisbane is right next to Brisbane City Council. It's a Shire Council nearby, City Council nearby. The local council is trying to clarify how the claim will apply to 3,500 properties like parks. In the Brisbane court this week, lawyers for the Aboriginal Land Council are arguing over whether, wait for it, graves and cemeteries would be handed over to native title. This is the madness that's happening under native title. It's happening just 20 kilometres from the CBD where I am, in Queensland's capital, Brisbane. time to take an end to native title and treat everyone in this country equally. That's been Pauline's policy. That's my policy. But look, that's all for me. I've got to get back to writing a submission to the Senate. My eyes are getting all fuzzy from looking at screens for the last 5 days, for about 14 hours a day, but nearly knocked it off, and I've got to get it in today. So I'm writing a submission to the Senate inquiry into the integrity of information on climate and energy. Look, it's just a subtle way for the Greens and Labor to foreshadow that they want to bring back the misinformation and disinformation inquiry. But we all know where the misinformation and disinformation is on climate. Have a great weekend, stay safe, and I hope your favourite teams win in the Rugby League and the Aussie rules. Have a great weekend. See you next week.